All right, so I've got, I think, Trevor, I've got about 20 minutes here, and I've got about 20 slides, so I'm hoping that math works out pretty well. So if I can do a minute a slide, I'll get through this. So this presentation is divided into two pieces. So we've got about 10 slides that talk about CMIC's initiative, our collaboration work in mechanical cutting, which will really support continuous mining. And then I've got about 10 slides on Vale's current work and thinking in the project direction that we're headed, which is quite aligned with the CMIC work. So within the CMIC collaboration, looking at continuous mining, mechanical cutting, we currently have the 4 mining companies listed there, and then Hatch as a technical group that's working with us. And you know, one of the key things with this is if we, the problems that are common to one mining company are really common to all. So that's what I'm hoping the power of the collaboration will bring it to us. So when we started on this, and I came into my current role in November of last year, and my first meeting with the CMIC group here in Toronto, at that point we were talking about one test. So getting one OEM into one location in one of the partner sites. And we hoped at that time to have testing underground cutting happening sometime in 2021, perhaps out into 2022. In the 6 or 7 months since then, there's been quite a bit of activity in the space within CMIC and the partner companies. So at the point where we are right now, we're talking about potentially 3 or 4 different OEM technologies going into 3 or 4 different mines. And we could see cutting, and I think that that top Gantt chart's a little bit aggressive, but probably good likelihood that we'll see some cutting in early 2020 is what I would suggest. And this slide doesn't show where or what OEM technologies. We hid one of the slides there. Yeah, so we've got the 4 potential locations with up to 4 different technologies in our partner locations. Now supporting the underground cutting, and I think, you know, as important, and this really needs to happen in parallel, is what do we need to understand about underground cutting or mechanical cutting of rock as opposed to drill and blast? So we've got a discovery project, essentially a research technology innovation project that we've currently bucketed into these areas here. So what's the mechanism of cutting? How do the machines work? And there are a variety of technologies that the machines use. And I'll talk a little bit about that on a slide that has all of the OEM's equipment. Ground support. What will ground support look like in the future with mechanical cutting? Can we reduce our ground support? How will this change our mine designs? What will mining look like differently in the future? Our current piece is really just to get the cutting, but certainly the work into the future is how will we adapt our mining methods to work with mechanical cutting? What infrastructure is required and maintenance? So where are we with this project? Trevor Kelly and the partners that are involved with the collaboration, we developed the scope of work, and that was the main buckets of information shown on the previous slide. We've had a number of meetings. The intent is to pull in some of the research organizations where it makes sense and to use technical capacity within the partners that are within CMIC. As I said, first piece of this is to get mechanical cutting to show the technology. We think this will lead into changing mine designs, changing our cost models. We'll be able to get to ore bodies faster. And on the bottom of the slide there, a number of the organizations that we've been in discussions with that will potentially help us. So Merarco, NORCAT, Mining 3 from Australia. Lots of opportunity there to bring in technical expertise from within Canada and around the world. So the Vale update, and you'll find that this is very much aligned with what CMIC is doing. So we saw 4 areas of opportunity, and what I'd ask the audience, don't get too hung up on what the buckets are. I think other organizations may organize them slightly different, but I think the themes of opportunity you'll see is being fairly consistent here. I've got a good slide that shows all the OEMs and what the offerings are in mechanical cutting right now. I'll talk about where we're going as a company and how that fits into the CMIC collaboration. So the 4 buckets as we've organized them within Vale, and really what the red shows here, these are things that we think are the immediate considerations for us. The ones in black, what we see as future opportunity. So safety and quality, we certainly see opportunity there. Horizontal development, and really that's the first thing we're going to tackle, is being able to develop both in rock and ore. Big opportunities in improving the economics of ore bodies. If we can get to ore bodies a year sooner, 2 years sooner, it takes projects that are marginal and increases their value significantly. We're not looking at operating cost right now. We're considering the operating cost will be a wash at this point, but as we learn more about the cutting technologies and get them active in the mines, we'll have a better handle on operating cost. And we, as some of the CMIC partners, really would like to get cutting in ore using mechanical excavation as a replacement for drill and blast. Just a safety slide, and I won't read the words there, but if you look on the right, and I think that's one of our old Stoper Jackley drifts from the 1940s. Rough, very irregular, but you wouldn't expect a jumbo drift to be that much more smooth, just bigger currently. And a tunnel bore drift on the bottom, much smoother. You can see an opportunity for less ground support, better airflow. Getting people away from the face is a huge opportunity with mechanical cutting. Won't talk in detail on this slide, but really what I'm trying to point out here is we think the best case in a drill and blast round is to get to about 6 meters per day. Drill and blast, or drilling, loading, blasting around, mucking, and ground support. And if you can do those activities with no gap in between them, that's about a 16-hour cycle, gets you to 6 meters per day. The reality is we'll have delays during or between each parts of that cycle, which reduces us to about 4 meters per day. And the folks in the room would probably acknowledge that even 4 meters per day right now in our industry is considered fairly good advance. If we can develop at a modest rate of 0.4 meters per hour with mechanical cutting, and we ground support not in parallel but separately, we can expect about a 6 meter per day advance. If you start to bolt in cycle with the mechanical excavation machines, you're at an 8 to 10 meters per day. And that's really the number that we've been discussing within the CMIC group. That's where we're hoping this will go. But even 6 meters per day, and we have a safer process, big advantages. So just a comparison, and folks first thinking about mechanical cutting will say, well, why don't we use the traditional TBMs? They've been used fairly continuously for 40 years, really since the 1960s, get very high rates of advance. So in long tunnels, a kilometer, 10 kilometers, tunnel boring machines make a lot of sense, but they are very big machines, don't turn well, not suited for backing up. So in an operating mine, we need machines that are more nimble, have the ability to develop multiple headings simultaneously. So some of the offerings now from these OEMs are on the cusp of providing those opportunities for us. So what are the options? And we've recently at Vale put out an RFP to these 7 suppliers. The Epiroc equipment, 3 of the machines now there that are built use disc cutting. The master drilling made by Sully out of Italy, disc cutting as well. Sandvik and undercutting, Komatsu, an oscillating disc cutter. So lots of variations on technology to meet the same result. About 4 of these will be able to provide us a non-circular excavation, which is important to us as well. So we've and Frank from Komatsu's here. I think our RFP is closing tomorrow, so we'll get all our technical submissions in from our vendors, and then we'll move ahead with evaluation of those. And this is a slide that Vale's used in the last year, and I like it, and I'll explain it to the group. If our intent is to build a rocket ship to go to the moon, we're not going to make that the first step in what we do here. We're going to start simple. We're going to build our skateboard. If that works well, we'll turn that into a scooter, then a bicycle, then a motorcycle, then a car. Eventually we'll go to the moon. And the analogy here on mechanical cutting is our first step of this is to prove the cutting technology. Some of the OEM offerings have a cutter. If we need to later, we'll put bolting on that. We'll add shotcrete. There's lots of parts of the cycle that we'll add, but cutting is absolutely an essential piece of this, and it's the first piece that we need to solve. So where will we do this? For those familiar with Sudbury area, the Sudbury Basin there, Garson Mine on the southwest corner, ore body discovered there in 1908. The shaft there sunk in 1937, so it's been operating a long time. We have ramp access there, so we don't need to cut the machines apart, sling them down the shaft. We'll assemble them on site, drive them underground. We're only down a couple hundred meters in the McConnell ore body, so the intent is to cut there in a low stress ramp access area so that we can demonstrate cutting. So the existing in gray Garson ramp, and we're driving out to this McConnell ore body, which is only a couple thousand feet away from the Ravenna Garden subdivision. So we're quite close to the community, and we're hopeful down the road if we can mine here without blasting right under a subdivision. That'll be a good thing. Next one. So some of the test parameters, and I think this is last or second last slide, and these are the types of things that we'll need to collect for our CMIC discovery project as well. So cutting rate of rock, in rock and ore. How much can a mechanical excavator cut in an hour is important, but how does that translate into an 8-hour shift or a 24-hour day or in a week, in a month? It's not just about instantaneous rate. We need to reproduce that really month after month after month. part of the thing that will drive the cost is can a cutter cut an equivalent 4 meter round, and then the cutters need to be changed out, or can it cut 20 meters? So these are all very important things to us that we'll collect in our trials, both at the Vale location and with the CMIC partner locations. So last slide. In the Vale world and the CMIC partner world, really our first priority is to confirm commercial rate of cutting in hard rock. We'll need to compare safety of MRE versus drill and blast. We think it will be inherently safer, but what are the missing things that we haven't thought of? You know, how can we hurt people, and then how can we prevent that from happening? The various OEM offerings are somewhat varied in their versatility, maneuverability. So it'll be interesting as we go through and test these various machines, how will they land. Some will be well suited for long straight drives, others for being more nimble in an operating mine. And this is the first step of continuous mining. Until we get this figured out, there is no next step. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much. So we have about 5 minutes for questions, and we have some roving mics around Trevor and Bernadette. Open to the floor. Maybe I'll kick off then.
Yeah.
So, you know, referring to your slide on sort of getting to the moon, I mean,
yes.
On the one hand, I get the incrementalism and that we have to kind of prove this along.
Yes.
At the same time, though, the mining industry doesn't have 20 years to enable, you know, like the benefit of this technology or get the benefit of it. So, how do you balance those things? How are you thinking about that?
The discussions we've had both with CMIC and then internally is the other parts of the cycle, the bolting, the shotcreting. We know how to do those fairly well. We've done them for a long time. What we haven't done is mechanically cut rock in underground mines, really anywhere in the world other than a few test areas. So once we get the cutting, there'll be a big lineup of people that'll be saying, oh yeah, we're gonna help you bolt. We'll attach a bolter to the machine. Had some discussions with tunneling contractors, and they say, we can stick a bolter on anything. Some of the OEMs already have that built into their equipment. So we're varied, but once we prove the cutting, I really believe the rest will come on very quickly. Yeah.
Other questions from the audience? Good.
Yeah, actually, Andy, I have 2 questions. One
Yes.
is, how do you decide which mine to try at first, since there are 4 or 5 of you working?
Well, for us at Vale, we've got a number of mines in the Sudbury Basin. We picked one where we had ore that wasn't on our in our life of mine plan. We picked a spot that was low stress ramp access, so we could get to it easily. What the CMIC broader group is doing, and we're looking at a number of the OEM technologies. So I think it's important, and we're fortunate that there are a number of the CMIC partners that have sort of put up their hand and said, we'll take this machine here, we'll take this machine here. And I think that's important as a collaboration group. Rather than trying one of the OEM technologies, we're going to get an opportunity to see a number of them work, and you know, there may be 1 or 2 that emerge at the end that fit. Is that? Yeah.
So the next question I
Yeah.
was going to ask you is, was there any interest from the equipment suppliers to participate in this, or are they going to be just commercially supplying the equipment?
Now, Trevor, from I might direct this one to you from a CMIC perspective. I know we've had discussions with a number of the OEMs. From a Vale perspective, we fully expect that whichever OEM that we land on at our facility, that OEM will have to step forward and be a full participant in this. It's not like a drill and blast application where you know, it's well understood. We need the OEM with us right there.
Thank you very much. It's great to see that these kind of projects are happening.
Thanks.
So we have one more, another question there.
That's like,
Can we just, is that mic on? No? Let's have some help there, please.
I have a voice like Mike. Sorry.
Yeah, we've got another mic coming now. There you go.
Along the question, it was great, all the different protocols that you were looking at in order to understand all the different variables. Question, simultaneously, any work going on around what, how the cut ore will process through your mills versus blast, drill and blast, because it's a totally different shape, size, the whole works, and how well it will do it so that you're not kind of finishing one and then starting the next. I mean, is there a simultaneous project to evaluate?
Yeah, it's a great question. We are not looking at it, and I think Trevor's going to step up. So there may be some CMIC review in another sector there. Trevor, you want to take that?
Well, Jillian will talk a little bit today about the work that she's doing.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, right now, we don't have that connection piece to processing, but we talked a little bit in the board meeting yesterday around how some of these different technologies can be built one on top of the other, and this is an opportunity to potentially have some of the work that Jillian and her team is doing on the back end of a mechanical cutter with some sorting. So it's a conversation, but we haven't kicked off a project in that way.
What I'd add to that, I think initially we're going to see cutting in development rock, so that of course it's not going to the mill, and the percentage where we are using it in cut and fill, the percentage of ore is going to be fairly small compared to our bulk mining ore, so likely aren't going to see any significant changes in the mill. But to your point, as we take this along and 10 years out, 20 years out, and if we have a more significant amount of our ore being cut, we'll absolutely need to be there.